My name is Talia Weston. I'm 31, and last week, I stepped into a room filled with people who had spent 13 years acting like I didn't exist while taking everything for themselves. At my grandfather's will reading, my family divided millions. My father received a mansion. My brother inherited the company. I received a yellowed envelope with a phone number tucked inside. My brother laughed so hard that his bourbon nearly spilled across the table. Must be a homeless hotline, he said. Fits the lifestyle. So I did something none of them saw coming. I took out my phone, dialed the number, and placed the call on speaker right there in front of everyone. The voice on the other end gave a name, a dollar figure, and a title that was supposed to belong to me. And suddenly, every face in that room turned white. Before I tell you everything, if you enjoy a good revenge story, hit like and subscribe. But only if you think this one deserves it. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where people are listening from. Now, let me take you back to the morning when all of this began. The day my grandfather died, and my phone rang from a number I hadn't seen in 3 years. The call came at 5:30 a.m. I was already awake, going over renovation blueprints at the Ridgeline shop in Clarksville. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I nearly ignored it. Then I answered. Talia, it's Aunt June. Your grandfather passed away last night. I put my pencil down. The shop was silent except for the hum of the space heater and the smell of joint compound. The will reading is Wednesday in Nashville, June continued. Foster and Whitfield. Your father didn't put you on the guest list. She paused. But I thought you deserved to know. I ended the call and stared at the only photograph hanging on my shop wall. Harold Weston and me, when I was 16, pouring a concrete foundation together. His hand rested on my shoulder, and both of us were grinning. My father, Keith Weston, was the CEO of Weston Realty, the largest residential brokerage in Montgomery County. He announced that I was no longer his daughter when I turned 18. He did it during the company's annual holiday party, in front of 30 clients and every employee on his payroll. My crime? I told him I didn't want to sell houses. I wanted to build them. I enlisted in the Army. The following morning, Keith removed me from the family photographs, the holiday card, and the will. My brother Garrett made certain I remained erased. He controlled Grandpa Harold's phone, screened his visitors, and told the family that Harold didn't want to see Talia. That was a lie. Harold sent me 47 handwritten letters over 13 years. The first arrived at my barracks at Fort Campbell the same week I shipped out. After I returned home, we met once every month at a diner outside town. Nobody in the family knew. I called Aunt June back. You said I wasn't invited. That's right. I'm coming anyway. There was silence. Good. 3 months earlier, at the Dixie Grill, a cinder-block diner on Highway 41 south of Clarksville, Harold and I had met like we always did. We'd been meeting there on the second Saturday of every month since 2018. Same booth. Same order. Catfish sandwich, extra pickles, sweet tea. The waitress knew us by name. Harold was 84 and thinner than the last time I'd seen him. His hands trembled when he raised his glass, but his eyes remained sharp. They were the same blue-gray eyes that once scanned a construction site and immediately spotted the one stud that wasn't perfectly straight. Still building for people? He asked. 6 employees now, I said. We're expanding into roofing next quarter. He slowly nodded. Good. You understand what it means to work with your hands. Garrett never did. He put his tea down and leaned closer. The noise of the diner seemed to disappear. I'm changing some things, Talia. When I'm gone, someone will contact you. A man named Frank. Trust him. What kind of things? He shook his head. Not yet. I just need you to know that I never agreed with your father, and I never forgot you. Not for a single day. He reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. His grip was still strong. Weaker than it had been a decade earlier, but still the grip of a man who poured his first foundation at 22. Afterward, I drove back toward Clarksville. In my rearview mirror, Harold stood outside the diner with one hand raised. Against the sky, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. That was 3 months ago. He never brought up Frank again. I never asked. I should have. Wednesday came. Nashville. The offices of Foster and Whitfield occupied a tree-lined block in Green Hills. Limestone exterior, brass fixtures, and the kind of law office that smelled like old money and floor wax. I parked my F-150 between Garrett's BMW and Keith's Mercedes. My truck still had a dent in the tailgate from a sheet of drywall that slipped last Tuesday. It looked exactly like it belonged there, a work vehicle surrounded by expensive performance. I wore a clean flannel, dark jeans, and work boots I'd polished that morning. No blazer. No pearls. The receptionist checked her screen. "I'm sorry, your name isn't on the list." Talia Weston, Harold's granddaughter. "I see, but I don't need to be on a list. I need to be in that room." She picked up the phone, quietly spoke to someone, then waved me through. I pushed open the conference room door. 8 heads turned. Keith sat at the far end of the table, his hands folded together. His jaw tightened the second he saw me. Garrett sat beside him. He tilted his head and smiled the way someone smiles at a dog that wandered into a restaurant. Leanne, my stepmother and Keith's second wife, placed her hand on his arm. "Who invited you?" Keith says. Not a question, a challenge. "Nobody," I reply. "But Harold was my grandfather, and I have every right to be here." Thomas Foster, the estate attorney, adjusts his glasses. He looks from Keith to me. "Miss Weston is referenced in the will. She's entitled to attend." Keith's expression doesn't change, but his hands press more firmly against the table.
"Fine," he says.
"Sit down." I pull out the last empty chair, sit, and fold my arms. Foster opens the folder. He begins reading with the flat, practiced precision of a man who has done this 1,000 times. Keith receives the Belm estate, a 5-bedroom colonial on 2 acres, along with $900,000 in cash. Keith nods once, like he's simply accepting a receipt. Garrett receives operational control of Weston Realty, plus $700,000 and an investment portfolio. He types something into his phone before Foster even finishes the sentence. Leanne receives $300,000 and the Lexus. She dabs at her eye with a tissue that was already in her hand. Education trusts for the younger cousins, $150,000 each. No one objects. Everyone had expected something close to this. Foster turns to the final page. And to Talia Marie Weston. Every head turns toward me. One sealed envelope, to be delivered directly and opened only by the named recipient. He slides it across the table. The paper is yellowed, the edges soft, my name written in Harold's block lettering. The same careful handwriting he used to label every tool in his workshop. I open it. Inside is one sheet of paper. A 10-digit phone number is written beneath a single line. "Call Frank. He has your key. HW. No check. No property. No account number." Garrett leans forward and catches a glimpse. His laugh begins deep in his chest before bursting out loud. "A phone number? Seriously?" He looks around the table like he's performing for an audience. "Must be a homeless hotline. Fits the lifestyle." Keith doesn't laugh, but he doesn't defend me either. He simply stares down at the table. Leanne shakes her head. "At least she was mentioned." "That's more than I expected." One of the cousins chuckles. Aunt June, sitting near the window, doesn't. She watches me the way Harold always did, steady, patient, waiting to see what I'll do. Foster looks at me. "Miss Weston." The envelope falls outside the scope of the will. Outside the scope. I hold those words in my mind like a loaded round. I don't get up. I don't excuse myself. Instead, I take my phone from my pocket, place it flat on the mahogany table, and begin dialing. Garrett's laughter immediately stops. "What are you doing?" "Calling the number." I look at him. "You wanted to know what it is. Let's find out together." I tap the speaker button. The sound fills the conference room, each ring echoing against the wood paneling and portraits of dead partners covering the walls. 1 ring.
2.
Keith uncrosses his arms. Leanne's tissue freezes halfway to her face. 3 rings. Then a voice answers. Deep, calm, Tennessee gravel. "Talia, I'm Frank Heron. Your grandfather told me this day would come." The room goes completely still. Every sound, the AC, the traffic outside, even Garrett's breathing, seems to disappear. Frank continues. I'm holding all documentation for Western Holdings LLC, a company Harold established in 2014. He pauses. You are the sole successor managing member under the operating agreement. Another pause. Current estimated asset value, approximately $42 million. Nobody moves. The number hangs in the room like smoke. Garrett places his whiskey glass down so slowly that it makes no sound. His hand is trembling. Keith stares at the phone as if it has suddenly begun speaking a language he doesn't understand. Leanne's mouth falls open. Nothing comes out. Foster takes off his glasses. Aunt June closes her eyes and almost smiles. Thank you, Frank, I say. I'll come see you tomorrow morning. I end the call, pick up my phone, and look around the table. Every face I've seen over the past 13 years, the people who erased me, mocked me, and deliberately forgot me, is now staring back at me with exactly the same expression. Anyone else want to make another joke about the homeless hotline? Silence. Keith slowly rises from his chair. His voice cracks on the first word. What is this? That is the first time I've ever heard my father's voice break. I need to stop here because this was the moment I'd been waiting for since I was 18 years old. Not the money. The look on their faces when they finally realized they'd been wrong about me for 13 years. If you've ever been told you're nothing by the people who were supposed to stand behind you, you know exactly what this feeling is like. Subscribe if you want to see what happened next. And tell me, would you have called on speakerphone or walked out first? Garrett is the first one to explode. He's on his feet, pointing at me like his finger is a weapon. This is fraud. He had no right to create a separate company. Everything he owned belongs to this estate. Foster raises both hands. I need to verify that. But if the LLC was properly formed and its assets are separate from Harold's personal estate, then it doesn't pass through probate. Keith turns toward Foster. You knew about this LLC? I did not. Harold used independent counsel for the entity. My office handled only the will. Garrett paces behind his chair. $42 million. Western Realty is worth 15, maybe 18. You're telling me my grandfather moved money into a shell company for her? It wasn't moved, I say. My voice remains level and flat, the tone I learned while calling in medevac coordinates under fire. Give me the facts. Leave the feelings out of it. Harold created Western Holdings using his personal capital, land purchases, and commercial real estate development. It was completely separate from Western Realty. And you knew about this? Keith's voice has taken on a new edge. Thin. Dangerous. I found out 3 minutes ago. Same as everyone else. Leanne grabs Keith's sleeve. Keith, calm down. He pulls away. Be quiet. The room flinches. That's Keith Weston. Composed in public, explosive in private. And the mask has just slipped. Foster speaks cautiously. I strongly recommend that no one takes any action until the LLC documentation has been reviewed. If the entity is legitimate, this isn't a probate matter. Garrett stares at me. His jaw tightens as he calculates. I can see it happening. The Vanderbilt MBA running different scenarios through his head. But none of the numbers make sense to him, and he knows it. This isn't over, he says. I pick up Harold's envelope and slide it into my jacket. No, I say. It's just beginning. The parking lot is bright and quiet. Nashville heat rises from the asphalt. I'm unlocking my truck when Keith appears behind me, Garrett beside him like a lieutenant. Keith plants his hand against my door, blocking me. For the first time in 13 years, we're standing face to face without a table separating us. He's aged. His hair is thinner, his jaw softer, but his eyes haven't changed. They still carry the look of a man who believes authority is something you're born with. You're not taking a cent from this family, he says. My father was manipulated near the end of his life, and you are the one doing it. I manipulated him? I hold his gaze. You're the one who banned your daughter from seeing her own grandfather. You're the one who stood in front of 30 people at a Christmas party and announced that I wasn't your child anymore. All because I said no to you. Once. When I was 18. Keith removes his hand from the door. Not because he's backing down. because my words landed somewhere he wasn't expecting. Garrett steps closer. Listen, Talia. If the LLC is legitimate, we handle it within the family. No outsiders. No lawyers. We sit down and work this out. I look at my brother, 3 years older than me. MBA, tailored suit, manicured hands that haven't touched a hammer since he was 12. You don't want outsiders because you're afraid of what they'll discover. Garrett's expression changes, just for a second, but I catch it. The same flinch I've seen in soldiers when a round cracks too close. Don't pretend you know anything about. I get into the truck, shut the door, and start the engine. In the side mirror, I watch Keith and Garrett standing in the empty parking lot. Neither speaks. Neither moves. I still don't know what Harold left inside that USB drive. But I know my brother is afraid of something. And afraid people make mistakes. My apartment in Clarksville is 600 square feet.
Clean. Sparse.
Military habits. Everything has its place. Nothing unnecessary. Under my bed, I keep a small tin box. It's olive drab, dented at one corner, the kind of container the Army issues for personal belongings. Inside are 47 letters. Every single one came from Harold. The first arrived at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, during the week I started basic training. Written in block letters on lined paper. Talia, your father is wrong. I'm proud of you. I'll write every month. HW. And he did. Every single month for 13 years. Through basic training, advanced medic school, 2 deployments to Kandahar province, the Bronze Star ceremony, he watched through a live stream from his workshop, my discharge, my first renovation job, and when I hired my first employee. 47 letters. Some were short. Just a paragraph about the weather and the catfish at Dixie Grill. Others filled several pages, telling me about the early days of Western Properties. How he poured his first foundation at 22 using borrowed money and a pickup truck, not much different from mine. I pull out the last letter he sent, 2 months before he died. The handwriting is shakier. The words aren't. Talia, I don't have much time left, but I want you to know I built something for you. Frank has everything. Trust him. You are the only person in this family who never took anything from me and still showed up every month. That's why you get what I made. You're the one most like me. HW. I press the letter against my chest. My hands are shaking. Not the way they shook in Afghanistan. Not from adrenaline. This is 13 years of missing someone compressed into a single page. I let myself cry. The first time since Kandahar. Then I put the letter down, wipe my face, and text Frank Harland. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Show me everything. Frank Harland's office is a double-wide trailer sitting on a gravel lot outside Clarksville. No receptionist. No waiting room. Just a metal desk, a filing cabinet, and a framed photograph on the wall. Frank and Harold standing in front of a half-framed house in 1986. Both covered in sawdust. Both grinning like they'd just invented something. Frank is 69, lean and weathered, built like a fence post. His hands look like they were carved from hickory. He was. Harold had been his construction foreman for 22 years before Garrett forced the old crew out of Western Realty. Harold established Weston Holdings LLC in 2014, Frank says, spreading documents across the desk. He used his own capital, money he'd kept separate from Western Realty for decades. Personal savings, early land investments, and several commercial deals he handled on the side. No company funds. No overlap. The operating agreement is 12 pages long. My name appears on page 3. Talia Marie Weston, successor managing member. Harold's signature is beneath it. Frank signed as the witness. It's notarized. When Harold dies, ownership automatically transfers to you under the succession clause. No probate. No court. I look at him. It's a business contract, not a will. Why didn't he just put me in the will? Because Keith would have challenged it. He can contest a will. He can't challenge a business contract he wasn't a party to. Harold had thought 3 moves ahead. I turned to the asset summary. 12 commercial properties across 4 Tennessee counties. 340 acres of development land. An investment portfolio. Total estimated value, $42 million. I set the papers down and breathe. Frank reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a USB drive. Plain black. No label. Harold asked me to keep this, he says. He told me that if Garrett ever caused problems for you, you'd need it. He slides it across the desk. I don't know what's on it. Harold only said you'd understand when the time came. Back in my apartment, my laptop is open on the kitchen table. I plug in the USB. One folder appears. The label reads, Garrett. Inside are 3 years of expense reports from Western Realty, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Harold highlighted the discrepancies in yellow. Dinners that never happened. Travel that was never taken. Vendor invoices from companies that don't appear in any Tennessee business registry. The total is $340,000. $340,000 skimmed through inflated expenses over 36 months. Harold tracked every dollar, every line item, every fraudulent receipt. Attached to the files is a scanned memo written in Harold's handwriting. Garrett has been taking from the company since 2022. I haven't told Keith. Keith will protect him. If Garrett blocks Talia's path, she can use this. Not for threats. For negotiation. Harold had seen exactly what Garrett was doing. And instead of exposing him, he documented everything, storing it like ammunition inside a locked cabinet, waiting for the person he trusted to use it. Right? I close the laptop and sit in the darkness. My phone buzzes. Garrett's name appears on the screen. I hired a litigation team, he says. His voice sounds tight, almost rehearsed. We're going to challenge the LLC. Harold was 84. History of cognitive decline. We'll have it voided. He was 73 when he formed it. A pause. Garrett, sharp enough to build a $42 million portfolio without anyone in the family noticing. Silence. And Garrett, be very careful about what you dig up, because I can dig too. The line goes dead. I look at the laptop. The folder labeled Garrett glows against the black screen. Harold gave me a grenade. The question is whether I pull the pin or simply place it on the table and let my brother stare at it. Aunt June calls at 9 that night. They're meeting at Keith's house right now. You're not invited. Surprise. What are they planning? Keith wants to spend $100,000 on a law firm, Hamilton and Ross, to challenge the LLC on diminished capacity grounds. Garrett is building a timeline of Harold's supposed cognitive decline. And Leanne told everyone that Harold was influenced by Talia during his private visits. I lean against the kitchen wall. The radiator ticks. They're saying I brainwashed him. That's the narrative. Garrett's the one pushing hardest. He told everyone you don't have money for a real lawyer and that you'd fold under legal pressure. His exact words were, she fixes roofs. She doesn't understand litigation. I almost laugh. I've been underestimated by people pointing rifles at me. A man wearing a Brooks Brothers suit isn't going to intimidate me. June, thank you for calling. You don't have to thank me. Harold asked me to watch out for you. I'm keeping my promise. After we hang up, I open my laptop again. The Garrett folder. $340,000. Capacity evaluations. I'll need those. Harold mentioned a doctor in one of his letters. I pull up the letter from 2022. Had my checkup with Dr. Susan Park yesterday. She says I'm sharper than most 60-year-olds. Told her that's because I don't sit behind a desk. I text Frank. Did Harold get formal capacity evaluations? His reply comes 2 minutes later. 2014 and 2022. Dr. Park. Both clean. Harold prepaid a retainer with Sandra Reeves at Carlton and Reeves in Nashville for you. She's expecting your call. Harold had thought 3 moves ahead every single time. I pick up the phone and dial Sandra Reeves. Miss Weston, she says. I've been waiting for you. Sandra Reeves is 52, a partner at Carlton and Reeves, and she doesn't waste words. Her office is on Music Row. Glass desk. 2 chairs. No art on the walls. She runs things lean. Harold retained me 2 years ago, she says, flipping through the operating agreement. Paid the full retainer up front. Told me his granddaughter would need corporate counsel when the time came. She reads for 3 straight minutes without saying anything. Then she looks up. This is airtight. Harold used Richard Morrow, one of the best LLC attorneys in the state. The successor member clause is unambiguous. The entity was properly formed, separately funded, and has its own tax history. She closes the agreement. Keith can't challenge this through probate because it isn't part of the estate. What about the capacity argument? Harold completed 2 independent cognitive evaluations in 2014 and 2022. Dr. Susan Park, board-certified neuropsychologist. No family connection. She looks directly at me. Both evaluations are clean. If Garrett argues diminished capacity, these documents will end the case at the preliminary hearing. She picks up the USB drive. I brought it inside a sealed envelope. She plugs it in. 5 minutes pass as she reads. Then she looks up. $340,000 in falsified expenses. This is embezzlement. I know. If Garrett challenges your LLC, you can countersue. Or you can use this as leverage during a private negotiation. Both options are legal. I don't want to send my brother to prison. Then use it to secure your seat at the table. If he backs down, you keep the file. If he pushes, you push back harder. I want to meet the whole family. Saturday, Harold's house. I'll handle this myself. Sandra raises an eyebrow. Without me. Without anyone. This is between me and them. But I want you on speed dial if things go sideways. She nods. Harold said you'd handle it this way. Thursday night, Garrett calls. His voice is colder now, more rehearsed. Someone has clearly coached him. I want you to understand something, Talia. If we take this to court, you'll be facing Hamilton and Ross, 15 attorneys, a forensic accounting team, and expert witnesses on cognitive decline. He pauses for effect. You run a renovation crew. You don't have the resources for this fight. What I have, I say, is a Bronze Star, 2 tours in Afghanistan, a small business I built from a truck and a tool belt, and documented proof that I was the only person in this family who visited Harold every single month for 13 years while you controlled his phone to keep me away. The line goes completely quiet. I can hear his air conditioner running. Then he changes tactics. His voice becomes softer, taking on the negotiation tone he uses with clients. Look, we're family. Let's split the LLC 50-50. You take half, we take half. Fair. You want to talk to me about fair? I let out a breath. You're the person who blocked Grandpa's number on my phone and told him I didn't want to visit when I was calling every week. You can't prove that. You sure about that, Garrett? Silence. Long enough for me to hear a clock ticking somewhere on his end. I've negotiated under mortar fire. I tell him, you're going to have to do better than a phone call. I hang up. I place the phone down. My hands are steady. I learned a long time ago that the people who yell the loudest are usually the ones with the weakest position. Garrett isn't loud anymore. He's calculating. But he's calculating from a losing hand. And somewhere behind all that Vanderbilt polish, he's beginning to understand it. Friday evening, 8 o'clock. I'm reviewing property files for the holdings at my kitchen table when someone knocks. I check the peephole. Keith Weston. Alone. No Garrett. No Leanne. I open the door. He walks inside without being invited, carrying the habit of a man who's owned every room he's entered for 30 years. His eyes move across my apartment. The small kitchen. The papers spread across the table. The single photograph of Harold hanging above the couch. He stares at the photograph. His jaw tightens. My father didn't know what he was doing when he created that LLC, he says. He was 73. He was vulnerable. He was 73 and building a $42 million company without any of you noticing. I look directly at him. That isn't vulnerability. That's precision.
Keith turns toward me.
You abandoned this family.
You joined the army.
You walked away from everything I built. I walked away from you because you told me my only value was sitting behind a desk in your office and doing whatever I was told. I pause. And when I said no, you erased me. He takes half a step backward. Not from fear. From impact. If you respect this family, he says, his voice quieter now, you'll share what he left you. If you respected your daughter, I answer, you wouldn't have needed 13 years and a dead father to finally stand to her kitchen. The words hit him like a slap. He can't answer. He's silent for 10 seconds. Then he walks toward the door. He doesn't slam it. He closes it gently, the way a man closes something he knows he'll never be able to open again. I stand alone in my kitchen. Harold's photograph watches from the wall. I text Sandra Reeves.
Saturday.
Harold's house. 2 o'clock, I'm ending this. Saturday morning arrives. The family group chat I was never added to has been busy. June sends me screenshots. Garrett has been working. He filed the challenge with Hamilton and Ross. $50,000 upfront. Another $50,000 committed from Keith's inheritance. His message to the family reads, "We will prove Harold lacked cognitive capacity when the LLC was formed in 2014. Talia manipulated a vulnerable elderly man during unsupervised private visits. We will have the entity dissolved." Leanne adds her own message. Harold loved this entire family. He wouldn't have wanted division. Talia is tearing apart what he built. I read it while sitting in my truck outside Frank's trailer. I could feel angry. Instead, I feel clear. That's what combat training does. When the stakes become high enough, the noise disappears, and all you can see is the next move. I call Sandra Reeves. Bring copies of both capacity evaluations to the house this afternoon. And bring the USB drive. I'm hoping I won't need it, but if Garrett crosses the line, I will. Harold had Dr. Park complete 2 full neuropsychological evaluations. Both are thorough. Garrett's capacity argument won't survive a preliminary hearing. And the expense reports? $340,000 in documented embezzlement. If Garrett sues you, this becomes a counter. If he doesn't, it's leverage. I'll handle it in the room. Just be available by phone. Are you sure you don't want me there? I've walked into harder rooms than my father's living room. Sandra pauses. Harold told me you'd say exactly that. I drive past Belm on the way home. Harold's house.
Keith's house now.
The American flag still hangs from the porch. The workshop out back is dark. I'll be inside that house in 4 hours. And this time, nobody is going to ask me to leave. Saturday is here. And I'm about to walk into my grandfather's house, the house my father inherited, the house I was banned from for 13 years, and end this. Not with lawyers, not with arguments, but with documentation and the truth. If you've ever been thrown out of a room and returned stronger, this part is for you.
Stay with me.
And if this story is keeping you awake, share it with someone who's been through the same thing. 2 o'clock, Belm. The house looks exactly as it did when Harold was alive. White columns, a wraparound porch, and magnolias lining the driveway. Keith keeps the exterior flawless. Inside is a different story. 10 people are gathered in the living room. Keith has taken the armchair beside the fireplace, Harold's chair. Garrett stands beside the mantel with a whiskey in his hand, still wearing his suit jacket. Brooke, Garrett's wife, sits on the love seat with her ankles crossed and her phone resting in her lap. Leanne is arranging tea on the sideboard, playing hostess the way she always does, making sure the appearance of normality continues even when the house is burning around them. Aunt June sits near the hallway. 2 uncles and a cousin occupy the remaining chairs. They think I've come here to surrender. I can see it in Garrett's posture.
Loose.
Confident. The way a man stands when he believes the outcome has already been decided. Keith leans toward Leanne and whispers. She'll back down when she sees the legal filing. I walk through the front door alone. No Sandra. No Frank. Just me, a document folder under my arm and a USB drive tucked into my jacket pocket. Garrett straightens. No lawyer today? I don't need a lawyer to talk to my family. I place the folder on the coffee table. I don't sit. Standing is a choice. You control the room from your feet. Keith speaks first. Before you say anything, we've retained Hamilton and Ross. The challenge has already been filed. We're contesting the LLC on grounds of diminished capacity. He says it like he's delivering a verdict. I nod. I know. And I'm here to help you avoid the biggest mistake of your lives. Garrett's smirk fades slightly. Not enough. Not yet. I open the folder and place 2 documents side by side on the table. This is the operating agreement for Weston Holdings LLC, filed in 2014. Harold Weston, managing member. Talia Weston, successor managing member. Notarized. Legally binding. I slide it toward Garrett. He doesn't touch it. And these are two independent cognitive evaluations performed by Dr. Susan Park, a board-certified neuropsychologist with no connection to the family. One was conducted in 2014 when the LLC was formed. The other was completed in 2022. I place both beside the operating agreement. Both confirm Harold had full mental capacity. 3 documents. The room goes silent. The LLC isn't part of Harold's estate. It doesn't pass through probate. It cannot be challenged through inheritance law. It's a business contract, and I'm the named successor. I look directly at Garrett. If you file a capacity challenge, you'll be fighting 2 clean evaluations from an independent physician. Sandra Reeves at Carleton, and Reeves told me your case won't survive a preliminary hearing. Garrett's jaw tightens. Keith's eyes move from the documents to me and then back again. Harold was being manipulated. Garrett begins. Garrett. My voice is quiet.
Steady.
The same tone I used when a private was panicking during an ambush, and I needed him to keep pressure on a wound while I called for extraction. Stop. I pause. Because what I'm about to say next, you won't want this room to hear. The color drains from his face. He knows. He doesn't know exactly what I have, but he knows there is something. The room holds its breath. I reach into my jacket, pull out the USB drive, and place it beside the 3 documents. For items on the coffee table. Suddenly, the room feels like a courtroom. One chance, I say. Drop the challenge before I open this. Garrett stares at the USB drive the way someone stares at a locked door when they already know what's waiting on the other side. What's on that? His voice has lost all its texture. Flat. Stripped clean. 3 years of Western Realty expense reports. 2022 through 2024. I pause. Harold flagged every discrepancy. Vendor invoices from companies that don't exist. Travel claims that never happened. Dinners that were never served. I look at him. $340,000, Garrett. Harold tracked every cent. The room doesn't gasp. It contracts. Keith turns toward Garrett. You took money from the company? Those were legitimate operating. $340,000. Keith's voice reaches a register I've never heard before. Disbelief cracks through decades of control. Brooke closes her eyes, gripping her phone so tightly that her knuckles turn pale. I could give this to the police, I say. Corporate embezzlement from a family business. That's a felony in Tennessee. I let the words settle. But I'm not going to do that because Harold didn't want it. I allow the silence to do the work. Here's what I'm offering. Garrett looks at me. You drop the legal challenge. You resign as CEO of Western Realty. You repay the $340,000. I pause. An installment plan is fine. No one goes to court. No one goes to jail. We resolve this as a family, which is exactly what Garrett said he wanted from the beginning. Garrett sits down, not in a chair, on the arm of the couch, like his legs have simply given out. His suit jacket bunches at the shoulders. Aunt June speaks from the hallway, her voice quiet but clear. Harold told me last year. Talia is the only one who never took anything from me and still showed up every month. Now I understand what he meant. Keith looks at Garrett, then at me. The man who controlled this family for 30 years has no script left.
Keith stands.
The room watches him the way employees watch a CEO who's about to speak at a layoff meeting, bracing themselves for the impact and hoping for mercy. My father chose you, he says. The words come out like he's pulling splinters from underneath his fingernails. Over me. Over Garrett. He didn't choose me over anyone, I say. He chose me because I was the only one who showed up without an invoice. I visited him every month for 13 years. I never asked him for $1. I never asked to be included in the will. I just showed up. I pause. And that's what convinced him I could hold what he built. Keith's chin drops a fraction of an inch. For a man who has held his head high through every room he's ever entered, it's an earthquake. I need time, he says. You've had 13 years. But I'll give you more. I turn toward the room. Weston Holdings LLC is mine. That's not a request. It's documented, legal, and final. If anyone wants to review the paperwork, Sandra Reeves will provide copies. If anyone wants to challenge it, read the capacity evaluations first. And if anyone in this family actually wants to talk, really talk, I'm in Clarksville. My door is open. I pick up the folder and leave the USB drive on the table. Garrett stares at it. I walk toward the front door. Behind me, I hear Brooke whisper, "Garrett, we need to go home." Nobody follows me outside. Aunt June is already waiting on the porch. She wraps her arms around me. A quick, strong hug. The kind Harold used to give. "He's watching," she says. I nod. Get in my truck. We drive south on I-65 with the windows down and Harold's final letter folded inside my jacket, resting right over my heart. Monday morning. Western Holdings occupies a small office in a strip mall on Riverside Drive in Clarksville. There's nothing on the door except a number and a mail slot. Harold ran it lean. 3 full-time employees, with Frank working part-time. I meet them around a folding table in what used to be a storage room. Frank introduces me. Martha Dunn, 49, Harold's bookkeeper for 15 years. She knows every line item in the portfolio. James Pellier, 36, property manager for the commercial holdings. And Rosa Fuentes, 41, acquisitions analyst who sourced the land deals. They've been running on autopilot since Harold's health declined last year, following his standing orders. Waiting. Harold told us about you, Martha says. Talked about you every week. The army medic. The renovation company. The girl who showed up. I don't pretend to know how to manage $42 million, I tell them. I know how to frame a wall, run a crew, keep a schedule, and make payroll. I explain that I need an interim CFO to audit everything and bring me up to speed. I need Frank advising on operations. And I need all 3 of you to keep doing what Harold trusted you to do. James leans back. And what do you do? I learn fast. I show up every day and make the calls Harold would have made. Long-term thinking, community investment, no shortcuts. Rosa smiles. It's the first smile I've seen in that room. I also keep Ridgeline renovations running. 6 employees depend on me. There's a project in progress. I don't shut down the small thing just because the big thing arrived. Harold started with a truck and a borrowed foundation form. I started the same way. I'm not going to forget that. 2 weeks later, Garrett calls. His voice is stripped down. No negotiation tone. No rehearsed lines. Just a man on the other end of the phone who has run out of moves. I'm dropping the challenge. The lawyers confirmed the capacity evaluations are solid. There's no case. And the rest? A long exhale. I'm resigning from Western Realty. Brooke made it a condition. Full transparency, or she's gone. I'll repay the $340,000 over 3 years. She's helping me set up the schedule. Good. When the last payment clears, I'll destroy the drive. No copies. No record. He's quiet for a moment. Harold knew the whole time. He knew everything, Garrett. He chose not to destroy you. More silence. Then, quieter than I've ever heard my brother speak. I'm sorry about the homeless hotline comment. I don't need an apology. I need you to pay what you owe and treat people with basic respect. Start with that. Okay. And Garrett? Yeah. Brooke sounds like a good person. Don't waste her. He almost laughs. Almost.
Yeah.
She is. We hang up. I sit in the holdings office, staring at the folding table where 4 people are trying to continue what one man built over 40 years. Keith hasn't called. He hasn't texted. He hasn't sent a message through Leanne, June, or anyone else. He's disappeared into the Belm house like a man retreating into a bunker. Not because the fight is over, but because admitting he lost would require him to say words his mouth has never formed. I know he won't call. And I've stopped waiting. You can leave a door open for someone without standing at the threshold. That's a boundary. That's also self-respect. Frank brings me a list. 4 names. People Harold trusted. People Garrett had fired from Western Realty during his efficiency restructuring 3 years earlier. The real reason? They were loyal to Harold, not Garrett. Anyone who might have noticed the expense irregularities had to go. Pete Calloway, 58, construction foreman, 22 years with Harold, fired through an email on a Tuesday. I call him first. Harold told me there'd be a day like this, Pete says. I've been waiting 3 years. I'm sorry it took this long. Don't be. I'm just glad it's you. Martha Dunn had already been working for Holdings behind the scenes, but Pete brings 2 more people with him, a site supervisor and a procurement lead, both pushed out by Garrett. By Friday, Western Holdings has 7 employees gathered around that folding table. I buy a real conference table. Nothing fancy. Reclaimed pine. The same species Harold used in his workshop. I hold the first all-hands meeting. 7 faces stare at me, waiting. Here's what I know, I say. Harold built this company to last. He chose people who build things, not people who take things. That's why you're here. I don't know every answer yet, but I know how to show up, ask the right questions, and make decisions based on what's in front of me. Harold taught me that with sawdust and patience. Pete raises his coffee mug toward Harold. The room raises theirs. It isn't a boardroom toast. It's a job site tradition. The kind where you drink bad coffee from a thermos and get back to work. Harold would have liked it. 3 months in, numbers don't lie, even when families do. Garrett resigned from Western Realty. The board hired an outside CEO, a woman named Karen Ulrich from a Knoxville brokerage. The company stabilized, but its momentum stalled. Garrett's $700,000 inheritance is shrinking. $50,000 in legal fees went to Hamilton and Ross for a challenge that never even reached trial. Then came the first quarterly payment toward the $340,000 repayment, $28,000 transferred automatically. Brooke made sure it was set up that way. She filed a post-nuptial agreement that same week. Garrett is in therapy. Keith spent $90,000 on legal consultations before anyone told him there was nothing left to litigate. The Belm house costs $15,000 a month in maintenance, taxes, and insurance. His $900,000 inheritance is a clock ticking down. Leanne got a job at a real estate office in Brentwood. Administrative entry-level. Her first paycheck in 15 years. She told Aunt June it felt terrifying and good.
I could feel something about that. I chose not to.
At Western Holdings, 3 development projects are on schedule. The CFO I hired, a woman named Elaine Mays who spent 20 years at a Nashville commercial REIT, finished her audit and said the same thing everyone keeps saying. Harold built this right. The foundation is solid. I'm enrolled in a 12-week executive operations course online. Not an MBA. A practical toolkit for someone who knows how to build a house but is learning how to build a company. Every Saturday morning, I'm still at the Ridgeline job site by 6. Hard hat. Tool belt. Measuring tape in my back pocket. The crew doesn't call me CEO. They call me T. That's the name Harold used in his letters. For months after the will reading, Leanne asks to meet. We sit in a coffee shop on Franklin Road, neutral ground. She's wearing flats instead of heels. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She orders a black coffee, which is new. She used to order lattes with 2 modifications and a complaint. I owe you an honest conversation, she says. Not an apology tour. Just the truth. I wait. I knew what Keith was doing when he cut you off. I watched it happen. I told myself it was between him and you, that I shouldn't interfere. She wraps both hands around her mug. The truth is, every time Keith pushed you further away, my share of the family got bigger. I didn't plan it, but I didn't stop it either. No, you didn't. I'm working now. She pauses. First time since Keith and I married. Entry level. I answer phones and sort mail. She says it without self-pity.
Just fact.
Keith hasn't left the house in 3 weeks. He sits in Harold's study all day. Doesn't eat much. Doesn't talk. I can't help him, Leanne. He has to want to help himself. I know. She takes a sip. If I need a reference for another job eventually, would you write one? The question surprises me. Not because she asked. Because it took courage. Yes, I say. Not because I've forgotten what happened. Because I'm not going to turn into what this family tried to make me. She nods. Stands. Leaves a 5 on the table. Then walks out. It's not reconciliation. It's not forgiveness. But it's the first honest exchange I've had with a member of my father's household in 13 years.
I'll take that.
5 months in, the first project I greenlit under my own authority was Harold's Crossing. 32 affordable housing units plus ground floor commercial space in Clarksville. The land was already part of the holdings portfolio. Harold bought it in 2018. He had a note stapled to the deed. This is where we started. Build something people can actually live in. I'm standing on the lot at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Hard hat. Steel toes. A set of blueprints rolled beneath my arm. Pete Calloway walks the perimeter with me, pointing out the grade, the drainage angles, and the best orientation for natural light. Harold wanted to do this 5 years ago, Pete says. Garrett said the margins were too thin. Harold shelved it. Harold's not shelving it anymore. Pete kicks at a clump of dirt and grins. No, ma'am. We walk the entire lot. I mark the positions for the first foundations with orange spray paint, the same way Harold taught me when I was 16. The summer we poured the concrete pad for his workshop. Build from the ground up. Get the foundation right. Everything else follows. Frank drives up in his truck and stands at the edge of the lot with his arms crossed, watching me mark the ground. Harold said you'd build something better than he did, Frank says. I'm starting to believe him. I look out across Clarksville. 3 blocks east, the Ridgeline shop. 5 blocks north, my apartment. This is the town that kept me when my family wouldn't. My grandfather built an empire. I'm building a neighborhood. Both start the same way, with someone who refuses to quit, standing in the dirt at 7 in the morning, deciding where the walls go. 6 months later, Keith still hasn't called, hasn't texted, and hasn't sent a message through anyone. Aunt June tells me he's still living in the Belm house. He goes to the grocery store on Tuesdays, skips church, and spends his days sitting in Harold's study. The room Harold used for planning. Blueprints, ledgers, and the old rotary phone he never replaced. June says Keith doesn't touch anything in the study. He just sits in Harold's chair and stares at the bookshelves where Harold kept his journals. I think I understand. Keith isn't grieving his father. He's grieving the version of himself that could have been different. The version that could have said, I'm proud of you, instead of, you're not my daughter. He sees Harold's life laid out in that room. And somewhere among those journals and old receipts, he sees the proof that Harold loved me the entire time Keith was trying to erase me. That's the hardest thing a controlling man can face. Proof that his control didn't work. One evening, I drive past Belm. The study window glows warmly against the dark brick. I slow down for a moment. I think about pulling into the driveway, knocking on the door, saying something, anything, to close the distance. I don't stop. I learned something in Afghanistan that applies here. You cannot save someone who doesn't signal for help. You can leave the door open. You can make sure they know where you are. But you cannot carry someone out of a room they've chosen to sit in. Keith knows where I live. He knows my number. The door is open. I keep driving. South on I-65, back to Clarksville, back to the foundation that's already being poured. 1 year later. Thanksgiving. But not at Belm. I hosted it at the Ridgeline shop. We pushed the workbenches against the walls and set up a long table made from leftover Harold's Crossing lumber. Rough sawn pine, sanded just enough to keep the splinters away, stained dark walnut, because that's what Harold would have chosen. String lights hang from the ceiling joists. The space heater hums in the corner. Mismatched chairs from Ridgeline storage. No china. Paper plates and real silverware. A compromise I'm comfortable with. The guest list. Frank. Martha.
Pete.
Rosa.
James.
My 6 Ridgeline employees. Aunt June, who brought sweet potato pie and a bottle of bourbon. 13 people. None of them share my last name. All of them chose to be there. Then a truck pulls up outside. Not a truck I recognize. The door opens. Garrett steps out alone. He's holding a bottle of wine and stands at the shop entranced like a man who isn't sure whether the door is meant for him. I don't know if I'm welcome, he says. You're here. I tell him. Come in. I pull up an extra folding chair. Garrett sits between Frank and Pete, 2 men he fired 3 years earlier. Nobody mentions it. Pete hands him a plate. Frank pours him coffee. You know how to wire a junction box, Frank asks. No, Garrett says. Then you're on dish duty tonight. The table erupts in laughter. It's loud, rough,
Real.
the sound of people who work with their hands and don't perform for each other. Keith doesn't come. Nobody mentions that either. But Aunt June squeezes my hand beneath the table and whispers, Harold would have loved this table.
She's right.
This table is smaller than the Western dining room. Louder. Better. Every seat earned. After everyone leaves, I drive to Belm. Not to the house. To the workshop. The side gate is unlocked. Keith never comes out here. The workshop is Harold's. Always was. Always will be. I pull a chain on the light. A single bulb fills the room with warm yellow light. Cedar shavings cover the floor. Hand planes hang on the pegboard. A lathe sits beneath a canvas tarp. The workbench is 8 feet of maple, worn smooth in the places where Harold's forearms rested for 40 years. I sit on a stool. The metal is cold. The shop smells the way he did.
Cedar.
Linseed oil. Coffee from the thermos he kept on the shelf.
I'm talking to you now.
Whoever's listening, in a car, in bed, on a lunch break, wherever you are. I didn't tell the story to brag about $42 million. That money is a responsibility I carry every day. It's payroll for 13 people and a neighborhood being built from the ground up. I'd trade every dollar to have Harold sitting on this stool instead of me, showing me how to read the grain of a board so the stain goes on right. But he left me something money can't measure. He left me proof that someone believed in me when the rest of the world, when my own father, decided I was nothing. 47 letters. 1 every month. 13 years. That's the real inheritance. If you're sitting somewhere right now, and the people who should love you have decided you're not enough, I'm not going to promise you a phone call worth $42 million. But I'll tell you what Harold taught me. Don't wait for a seat at their table. Build your own. The wood is right there. The tools are in your hands. Start. So here's where I landed. After the will reading, the speakerphone call, the confrontation, and 6 months of silence from my father, I live by 3 rules. I wrote them on an index card and pinned it to the wall of my shop, right beside Harold's photograph. 1. I don't ask permission to exist. If they don't invite me, I show up anyway. If they don't make room, I stand. My presence is not negotiable. 2. I don't let anyone use my past, the enlistment, the estrangement, the years of being erased, as a reason to dismiss my future. That past made me. Every deployment. Every renovation. Every letter Harold sent to a soldier who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. 3. I keep the door open, but I don't chase anyone through it. Keith knows where I am. If he walks through that door, I'll be here. But I will not wait at the threshold. Waiting isn't strength. Patience is. There's a difference. Harold didn't leave me $42 million. He left me 47 letters, a workshop full of tools, and the unshakable knowledge that one person believed I was worth betting everything on. The money is a tool. The belief is the inheritance. I place my hand flat against the workbench. The maple is cool and smooth, worn into a shallow valley where Harold's hands rested 10,000 times. My palm fits perfectly.
Thank you, Grandpa.
I pull the chain. The light goes out. I slide the workshop door shut, then walk across the gravel to my truck. Highway 41 stretches south toward Clarksville, where the foundation of Harold's Crossing is curing in the November cold and 13 people are waiting for Monday morning. I turn the key. The engine catches. My hands on the wheel are steady. That's my story. If it hit you somewhere real, if you've ever walked into a room where nobody wanted you and refused to leave, tell me about it in the comments. And answer this. If someone handed you an envelope with a phone number inside, and everyone called it a joke, would you dial it on speakerphone right there, or wait? Type speakerphone or wait. I'm curious. Subscribe if you're new. Check the description for more. Thanks for staying until the end. Harold would have liked you.